Imagine being labeled as nothing more than a squatter, or we're tied to shame and stigma. But what if that stigma is built on false assumption?
Hey everyone, we're Kanto Queens and welcome to Kanto Queens.
In this episode of Breaking the Change of Bias, we're diving deep the damaging stereotype of squatter communities and reveal the truth behind the labels that define them.
Hey everyone, we're Kanto Queens and welcome to Kanto Queens
Chica, Kanto,
at Kwento. Today I'm joined by my lovely co-hosts, Kira
hi everyone!
and Naina.
Hi!
And of course, we'll be talking about something that often goes unnoticed or misunderstood: squatter communities. We'll explore the misunderstandings, the struggles, and the strengths of these communities, as well as by the end, we hope to shed some light on what's often hidden in plain sight.
We're here to share and explore how squatter communities are often misunderstood, judged, and stigmatized. We're going to take a closer look at the truth behind the labels, debunking the myths and stereotypes, discussing the challenges, and recognizing the resilience within these communities. So grab a seat and let's get into this conversation. But the real stories are often far different than what we think. Stick with us because by the end of this episode, you'll have a whole new outlook on how squatter communities are shaped by resilience and not just the stigma. We will challenge the assumptions, we will explore the untold stories, and give you a deeper understanding on what life really is behind the label.
So get ready for some real talk, real insight, and of course, real eye-opening chica.
So let's get into Kanto Quiz. Here we go! Guys, so I'm so curious on why do people end up squatting. It's easy to oversimplify and say it is a choice, but often it's not. In the cities like Cagayan de Oro, rapid urbanization means housing hasn't kept up with demand. For many families, squatting is the only affordable option for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, it's not always about choice, but of necessity. Like, the lack of affordable housing combined with low wages forces people into informal settlements. Like, take Barangay Makabalan, for instance. Many residents work at the nearby port, but their earnings aren't enough for formal housing.
Absolutely, but here's a counterpoint. Isn't squatting sometimes seen as enabling illegal land occupation? Like some argue that it's unfair to those people who follow legal processes for land ownership.
True,
That's-
but
yeah.
when you think about the root causes like poverty, unemployment, and government inaction, it's hard to blame the residents entirely. Squatting often reflects a failure of the system, but not in the individuals.
That's a very good point. Like, exactly, Naina. Like, and yet this brings up a neutral perspective about squatting isn't like inherently good or bad. It's a symptom of like deeper social issues. And addressing these underlying problems could reduce the need for squatting altogether.
That transitions us to another heated topic, like forced evictions, Like, are they ever justifiable? Some say they are necessary to make way for urban development or to address public safety concerns.
Necessary perhaps, but what are they human? Forced eviction often displays families with no warning or support. In Barangay Puntod, there was an eviction to clear space for a road widening project. Many residents end up living on the street because there's no alternative housing was provided to them.
That's heartbreaking. Like, it's very much heartbreaking. Because imagine, like, one day you end up not having like a home because
Yes.
you're getting evicted, and like that's heartbreaking. But here's the dilemma. Okay, so without these projects, cities might stagnate because like there's no development. Urban development benefits the border community. Still, eviction should come with fair compensation and relocation. That is when evictions are reasonable.
Yes.
I totally agree. Like a balanced approach is the key. Eviction should be a last resort and not a first response. Governments need to involve communities in planning, ensure they have somewhere to go. Like it's about respecting both development goals and human dignity.
Speaking of respect, let's talk about the stigma against the squatter communities. So, of this stems from stereotypes like associating these areas with crime or theft. But is that fair?
No, it is not entirely fair because there are valid reasons like the lack of sanitation or fire hazards in these settlements. But labeling everyone as a criminal or irresponsible that's just wrong because like you can't just label someone because of the place they have been or like where they are raised. You can't label them like that.
Yes. I totally agree with you.
And it overlooks the resilience of these communities. In Barangay Carmen, Barangay Upper Carmen,
Yes.
Okay.
yes, residents organize themselves to get up a cooperative daycare center. So it's not provided. They still have to organize. So like they are solving problems with limited resources. And that's something to admire, not stigmatize.
Exactly. So to truly address the stigma, we need to separate the legitimate concerns from harmful stereotypes. A balanced understanding will help create a better policies and reduce bias.
So that leads us to another debate. Should squatter communities be legally recognized? Or on hand, granting land rights could protect residents. On one hand, granting land rights and could protect residents from eviction and improve their access to services.
But wouldn't that encourage more illegal occupations? Legalizing these settlements might make urban planning even more challenging.
That's a valid
Right.
concern.
Yeah.
But what if we find a middle ground? Partial legalization with strict regulations could help. For instance, in Barangay Balulang, NGOs work with the local government to formalize parts of a settlement while setting clear rules for expansion.
Okay. I never thought about it that way. So that's quite a smart approach because again, it's about balancing humanitarian needs with urban planning goals so that we could be more humane, empathize with the people, and recognizing the realities of these communities doesn't mean compromising city development. Because when the people grow, the city also grows
Yes,
in a way.
I agree.
You definitely are right. So now let's talk about the role of media, the news that's circulating online about these squatter communities. Like, do you think media coverage helps or harms the perception of squatter communities? What do you think, guys?
I think in a way it helps. It depends on the post, right?
Yes, yes. It depends, but the positive stories can dispel myths and highlight the resilience of residents. But sensationalized coverage often reinforces negative stereotypes.
Like, when a fire broke out in a settlement.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, like when a fire broke out in a settlement in Barangay Consolacion.
Oh, I
So-
remember that.
Yeah, and like media outlets focus on the overcrowding and blame the residents. Because in squatter areas, we all know that the houses are very much packed together. but few highlighted the community's efforts to build or to rebuild the community afterwards. And like, we have experiences on these situations,
Not really.
like when the media is involved.
Not really.
Like, there
But-
was also this like one time near Agora, when people use the media to help those who are in squatters to report, not to report, but to like record, what was going on and inform the people surrounding the area of like an ongoing fire. So in a way, that could be used as
The role of media.
yes,
So the solution is a balanced reporting. That's what you're saying.
yes.
Yes, like media should present both the challenges and the strength of these communities. Like as you mentioned, that is a positive side. Like the media is helping those communities and informing them.
Mm-mm.
That way, we can foster understanding instead of division.
Yeah.
So, for me, squatter communities are complex, and we need to approach them with empathy.
We should, and of course nuance. Like, I have an aunt, and they live in squatter areas, and yeah, and
Have they
like,
experienced like this?
yes, like, oh my gosh, like, and so yeah, they have experienced a fire, and it burned down a lot of houses, including theirs. And now, when I go back to their community, I can see that they're growing and they're back to development, which is a good thing. Because then again, it shouldn't be just about how they are in a negative way, but how they are also are in a
Adjusting.
positive way. Yeah, like they together as a community rebuilt their homes. And so whether it's about housing, stigma, or like policy, the key is, communication, dialogue, and collaboration. But this does not only go to the like officials and the people, the middle class, but this also is the same for them as well. Because how can there be communication when the other person fails to recognize your efforts
Yes.
to lessen the burden or the challenges that they face in their daily lives as people who live in those areas? So these communities aren't problems to fix, but they are people to work with.
Like so, these misconceptions often shape public opinion, and we are here to break them down. Mikay, Naina, let's start by addressing the myth that people in squatter communities don't want to work.
I think it's a harmful stereotype. So now we're here in stereotypes. So, it is stereotype that people like in squatter areas like in Cagayan de Oro's, Barangay Kamamanan, or even in more urban areas like Metro Manila, we often forced into informal work. Like, are often forced. So it's not about a lack of work ethic. Maybe you are working multiple jobs. We don't know. Like selling food on the street, working in construction, or running small businesses. Like sari-sari store.
Yes.
They just don't have access to the same opportunities as others. They just don't. And that's a real issue because the system hasn't provided them with decent jobs or opportunities for advancement. That's why they're kind of stuck.
Get it what Mikay is saying, but I think we also have to highlight how resourceful people in these communities are. They're not waiting around for help, but they are creating their own businesses. Look at the vendors in Cagayan de Oro's, in Divisoria, or like places like Kogan Market. These aren't people who are avoiding work. They're just using the skills to survive in their daily lives. The informal sector of massive it keeps the economy going. Without these communities, would see a big gap in our daily lives.
Exactly. The myth often ignores the hustle or the hard work that happens in these communities. People are innovating in the first face of the adversity. But another stereotype we often hear is that squatter communities are filled with crime and violence. Like when we say squatter communities, we
Associate.
associate with the word crime and violence. Mika, you've mentioned this before. What's your perspective on this?
I really look, it's not everyone, and it's not a great thing to label everyone as a group who live in that community as full of crime or people who engage in crime or violence. That's a myth that should be dispelled. Because yes, poverty and crime sometimes go hand in hand, but this is not all the time. And not every squatter community is a hotbed of violence. Take Barangay Makasandig in Cagayan de Oro, for example. Sure, there are challenges, but crime isn't like defining feature of the community. In fact, people in these areas often create their own safety nets. They form tight-knit networks to protect each other because they know the government isn't doing enough to provide for their security. So they have to think about themselves and move by themselves, take initiative. Because it's about survival, not about violence being inherent to these communities. And maybe like these form of violence are being misunderstood by people who aren't in the same level or who aren't in the same situation that they are in.
Yes, that's right. Like communities like those in Tondo or Payatas in Metro Manila and even some in Cagayan de Oro are far from what people imagine. The strong sense of community often makes them safer. This natural self-regulation because people are looking out for one another. So in fact, I've seen how people help prevent crime like by keeping watch, organizing events, or even reporting criminal activities. When they see them, it's not perfect, but it's not the chaotic, lawless place like many make it out to be.
Yes, it is not. Because then again, it's the, like, maybe in a way, it does reflect,
Yes.
in a way, not all the time. But there are times when, like, how the people of that community handle the community, it reflects on how people perceive them. For example, of course, if a certain area does engage in like violent
But not all.
um,
In some areas.
in some
Not all.
areas, and that way we do tend to we then associate them with those words. But making it out to be for every community, every squatter community, that is just nonsense. It does not make sense to judge every squatter area as a place for crime and violence, because we don't know, when we engage with the people there, they might even be more hospitable compared to our own homes.
That's really a good point.
And I agree with Naina, because people do come together to protect each other. But let's not sugarcoat the fact, of course, that crime often arises in these areas due to systematic neglect. Again, systematic neglect. When basic needs aren't met, like decent housing, education, and healthcare, some may turn to desperate measures. The focus needs to be on addressing those root causes. Because it's not about blaming the community, it's about recognizing the failure of the system that's left these people behind.
True, I do get your point, both your point. And when we talk about lack of services, we often hear that squatter communities are disorganized or lack infrastructures. Do you believe this, or how true is this?
Um,
It's not.
for me, for you, it's not. I also, yeah, I'm with Dinah. I also think it's not, because the reality is that while squatter communities may have access to formal infrastructures, they aren't disorganized. Like, they're resourceful. People are resourceful and innovative. For example, in Cagayan de Oro's Upper Macasandig, or in some other places as well, residents have created their own systems for water and waste management. Like, see the collaborative efforts there. And in other parts of the country as well, we see communities organizing their own schools or healthcare services. These people are not sitting idly by. They're working with what they have, building what they can, and making it work. The real issue is that the government isn't stepping in to provide the support that they actually need.
What they need.
Yes, like, help them promote the activities or these changes that they want to apply to the community, to their community, to further develop the people in their area.
I totally agree with you, Mikhail, but it's not that these communities are chaotic. It's just that they lack of support and resource that they deserve. People placed in Barangay Carmen in Cagayan de Oro, or in the heart of Quezon City, are building system from the ground. They are forming their own school, clinics, and local businesses, making their families get what they need to survive in their daily lives. It is a testament to their resilience, and they just don't have the formal services that the government should be providing to them.
Mm-mm. And I think, in a way, it's a bit shame. It's a bit a shame, but that might be the area where we fail as a society.
Yeah.
And we fail to support them because
I didn't see them.
yeah, because in the end, we're people. Every one of us want the best for each other. Most of us, that is. The government should be, maybe not should, but maybe in a way they could provide for them by ensuring that basic services are available and that these people are given the resources they need to thrive, by leading them out of the equation and not only make things worse. You know,
Like, yes, it's really true. It's definitely a failure of the systems. And now, I've heard this myth that squatter communities are a burden on the city and that they drain resources and contribute a little. What do you think about this? Is this
Fair judgment.
yes?
about, no, I think there's like 50-50, because in a way it's not, because in fact, never mind the 50-50, I think it's the opposite, because like people in squatter communities are often the unsung heroes of local economy, because from the vendors in the Visoria to construction workers in the urban centers, like, they keep the wheels of the economy turning. The informal sector is vital, and many squatter communities are doing more to keep things going than we give them credit for. The problem is they don't have access to formal employment opportunities or resources to break out of poverty. They struggle with it because maybe it's not about how they live, but maybe like what their life or what their livelihood has taught them. And but if we invest in them, they could contribute even more, especially if the government may perhaps invest in them there could be even more growth.
Contribution.
Yeah.
Exactly. These communities are vital to our economy. People in squatter areas are the backbone of the local labor local labor force. They don't they do the jobs that are often overlooked but are absolutely necessarily to the daily functioning of the city, whether it is in Metro Manila or Cagayan de Oro. Their contributions are immense. The real question is why isn't there more investment in these communities? Where aren't why aren't we supporting them with better housing, education, and job opportunities?
Yes, there is no denying that squatter communities contribute significantly to the local economy, but they need more support to unlock their full potential.
So like about how can we support them? I mean, why aren't we supporting them with better housing? I think just as people who live in squatter areas have don't have these necessary support, I think the government might also have like a lack, might also have a lack
They,
in
they,
resources.
they didn't see how the squatter areas face the problem because they only see them as like surviving every day, but they don't see how how people or how the residents are like facing, like example recently in Lapasan, the fires something
Yeah.
fire incident.
That occurred
Yes, that
here.
I have a friend there, like their house really
Burned,
yes, burned in the
burned down.
yes, like the whole town, like in the whole
What about
barangay
buildings?
3, they didn't get some things like example for like they didn't get ayuda from their barangays.
Why?
I don't know.
What housing? Housing.
Housing?
Yeah, did they provide the people with housing?
No.
Like
No,
temporary.
No,
So where
they
they
didn't.
they live?
We are four.
Temporarily.
We're four in a group. So the one my friend has a house. So they live there for temporarily. So the barangay didn't see them as like
People who like need help.
yes.
I know a story.
Yeah.
I saw this in the news, or I feel like this. Someone talked to me about this. They shared their story to me. It's a fire incident. Then it's a boy, and he got shocked why they didn't receive ayuda,
Oh.
especially when their house is really affected. Like the whole house is burned down, and he got shocked why the people whose house was not affected got the ayuda. So they prioritized that instead of the people, him and his family, that which is really had the house burned down. So they prioritize those families who are not affected.
Instead of those who are really affected.
Yes. It's
This
really
is-
unfair to them.
Yeah, and this
It
is
is.
very. It happens a lot, especially in squatter areas.
Yes.
But because then again, we don't know if it's because
How the
lack
people see them.
or
Like that.
yeah, maybe it's because of stereotypes. Oh, not maybe, but we don't know for sure if it's because of a lack of funds, a lack of like prioritization of the people.
Like how they see them as a stereotypes.
Yes, or because of stereotypes, and that affects the judgment of the government
How people respect
and people
them.
as well. Yes.
other people's perspective to them. It's really unfair for them to know that they need help, but the barangay officials or the other officials, they
Also
didn't see the
They struggle with this. They also have the struggle in how to handle it because then again, there are a lot of people in the squatter area. You can't just offer one and then not offer the others.
you should offer everyone.
Yeah, and that's difficult because
The funds of barangay is like a
It's
bit tight.
limited.
Yes, a bit tight.
it's very limiting.
I believe that they should prioritize first the people who are really in need instead of the people who are not really, in the upper hand. Like, for example, I've mentioned earlier about the fire incident. In that situation, I think that they should prioritize those people who got affected, the house burned down, instead of
While I also agree with your point, I think it's also important to give support to those who are looking for a decent job, so that they can earn decent earnings. That in turn will enable them to provide for their family and be able to support the family so that they may grow out of the poverty line.
Yes.
Because then again, it's not about the people not having jobs. It's about getting a decent job. And hey, the average earning of a Filipino does not amount to more than 15,000, and the lowest is 200,
Really?
somewhere around 500 peso below.
the minimum wage.
Yes. And how can that support for a family? Imagine.
Also saw that on the news. Like, the Inquiry Net, perhaps. I remember that. It's really not enough.
Yes, it's not. And then we expect them to pay their taxes, pay for their housing, and their basic daily necessities. And it's very difficult for them because of how much cash they have on hand. And they have to be mindful of how they spend it and where they earn that money. It's a very damaging, it's quite a damaging myth, because people in these communities want a better life, just like anyone. And the issue isn't that they don't care. People do care. And it's that they face so many barriers. That's all. Because whether it's a lack of access to education, healthcare, or proper housing, the systems is set up in a way that makes it incredibly difficult for them to move forward. But these people are fighting for change. They're advocating for their rights, organizing for better housing, and starting business. And they're deeply improving their lives.
That's exactly it. I've seen firsthand how people in squatter communities are constantly striving for something better, whether it's organizing to fight for land rights or coming together to build community-based projects. They are always pushing for progress.
So it's clear, the people in these communities are far from indifferent. They care deeply about improving their lives, and with the right resources, they could achieve so much more. Let's stop stigmatizing and start investing in these communities. Let's keep working together to break down the change of bias.
As we wrap up today's episode, let's take a moment to reflect on the key points that we discussed. We've unpacked how the stigma surrounding squatter communities is more than just a surface-level issue. It's deeply rooted in history, society, and economics. If we want to address it, we need to approach it with nuance and empathy, recognizing both the struggle and the resilience of these communities.
Exactly, Naina. Changing the way people perceive squatter communities could lead to a real policy changes, but those changes can be a double-edged sword. On the one hand, We could see policies that promote greater quality and access to resources, but on the other, poorly thought out policies could make things worse. That's why it's so important to not just change perceptions, but also to understand what this community truly needs.
Right, Kara. And I think we all agreed on something crucial today, right?
Yes.
Like the engagement is key. Support, communication, dialogue, empathy is key. Because it's not enough to just talk about squatter communities from the outside. Because we maybe even have experiences with squatter, with like going in squatter areas. For me, for instance, I have an aunt who lives in squatter areas and we visit them from time to time. And only then can we implement meaningful change that actually benefits not only the community but also the people in squatter communities.
Absolutely, Mikay. And at the heart of all of this, inclusivity. By addressing stigma and engaging with squatter communities in a respectful way, we can promote social inclusion and equality. These communities deserve to be part of the broader social fabric, and it's up to all of us to make it that happen.
Mm-hmm. And before we go, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. And we've got so many important topics lined up, and you won't want to miss any of them. Of course, our next episode is the last episode, but for us chicas, chica girlies, but we do hope to see you again in the next episode. And don't forget to subscribe again, to like, and if you have a friend you want to share this video with, make sure you share this with them so that you can promote the knowledge of why we must break the stigma of squatter communities.
Also, if you enjoyed today's conversation, we'd love you to leave us a review. It helps us more people find the show and join in this segment.
And be sure to subscribe and to stay updated on our upcoming episodes and keep an eye out for an exciting giveaway we have got coming up.
You do? I didn't know that.
No, it's just a joke.
Aww.
Thank you so much for listening, and remember, keep questioning, keep listening, and keep breaking the chains.
Thank you for hanging out with us today. Catch you in the next Chica. Bye!